All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for our Learning Lab Lunch and Learn. Today we have guests from IFF, Brett Mueller and Kate Ansorga, who'll be joining us to talk a little bit about lending for nonprofits, financial capital, and real estate solutions, and how IFF works with nonprofits in the community. They have done some work with Northwest Indiana before, but they are interested in expanding their footprint in our region. And so one of the kind of first things that we want to talk about is just learn about what nonprofits here are interested in, and so kind of what your readiness level is to work with an organization like IFF, and kind of what your interest is in lending and real estate solutions as a nonprofit organization. So IFF is a nonprofit themselves, and they are also a CDFI. Which is a community development financial institution. Legacy Foundation has been working for kind of a number of years now to try to expand the footprints of CDFIs in Northwest Indiana. It's a really important tool for economic development and community development. And so we're really happy to have them interested in putting more time and energy and effort into their Northwest Indiana work and footprint, and happy to have Brett and Kate with us today. So as I mentioned, I have everybody muted right now, but I will open it up after Brett and Kate give their overview, go over a few slides and give their presentation. We'll open it up and have a good conversation. So there will be plenty of time to ask questions if you have any, and just to talk. This is meant to be an informal session. I am recording today so that I can make this available to anybody who wasn't able to join. So just so you know, this is being recorded. So thank you again for joining. And with that, I will turn it over to Brett and Kate. You are both muted, so hopefully you can unmute yourselves. Okay, good.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly, and good afternoon, everybody. We really appreciate you all taking some time out of your schedules to join us this afternoon and to hear a little bit more about IFF. We're really excited to be having this conversation, and as Kelly said, expanding our reach a little bit more, or I guess maybe to better state it, be reacquainted with Northwest Indiana. Both Kate and I are based just over the border in Chicago, but these days we could probably be anywhere, obviously with the working from home. So as Kelly mentioned, my name is Brett Miller. I am a senior lender at IFF, and just wanted to talk through a little bit about our lending program. Kelly took some of my thunder with the what CDFIs are. It's quite all right. But IFF specifically, we are a mission-based nonprofit community development financial institution. We make loans to nonprofits that are looking to expand facilities. We also provide real estate solutions or consulting for real estate projects, as Kate will get into shortly. And we also have a community development arm that does a little bit more broad-based sort of community development projects, tapping into local stakeholders, bringing the full suite of resources that IFF has to bear. And part of that is also what we call our social impact accelerator, which includes research and evaluation on top of that community development, the lending side of the house, and also the real estate. We started in 1988 through a grant in the Chicago Community Trust. And the idea behind it was that nonprofits, and specifically a lot of the communities that they serve, had been shut out of traditional lending markets. And so IFF was looking for a way to bring access to capital to nonprofits in those communities. So we have essentially, we have a handful of products that we provide that we think are a little bit better tailored to nonprofits. So first off, We do facility loans for acquisition, new construction, renovation, maintenance of existing facilities, and then also to organizations that might be leasing facilities. So we'll help them with tenant improvements, or they can also be called leasehold improvements. We do this through a couple different varieties. Like I said, we'll do a first mortgage loan, typically with organizations that are looking to do any one of those things. But we also will bridge capital campaigns. So as an organization might be collecting or getting pledges on a capital campaign, if they haven't collected all of that money yet, we can provide the gap funding to get the project started and then have our loan be paid off as the capital proceeds come in. Some other things that make us a little bit unique from different lenders is that we will also do subordinate loans. If there is part of a capital stack, if there's a lender that has say an 80% loan to value requirement and the project needs a little bit more money to get it over the hump, we can step into that role. It's something that we're willing to do. We also do equipment and vehicle loans. Our typical loan size is between 10 million and actually it's gone up a little bit. We'll go up to $7 million just as of recently. We do 5-year, our terms tend to range from between 5 years and 15 years. Like I said, with the capital campaign loans, we can go a little bit shorter than that. Those are a slightly different structure, but those will usually be around 3 years. And for our amortization, another unique thing about IFF is that we will fully amortize our loans. And what that means is that if you are looking at a 5-year term, the loan will amortize over 5 years so that you don't have to worry about a potential balloon at the end of the term, or having to worry about a refinance. So there's a couple different structures that we could do there. Some other really unique features I think about IFF. We are a non-appraisal based lender, which I think gets into a little bit of our history and why we exist. Organizations that work in low income communities often have issues with the appraisals and being able to get the amount of loan that they would need for their project. So that's an equity issue for a lot of nonprofits and a lot of the communities we work in. So we do not require appraisals for loans up to $3 million. Once we get a little over that, we do request appraisals at that point. We're also willing to lend up to 95% of our total project cost, which is a little bit different, obviously, than traditional lenders. We don't have prepayment penalties, so that means that if grants obviously are a great source of revenue for nonprofits. If you get a grant and you can use that to pay off an IFF loan, there's no penalty that you would have to be, or you would be charged if you were to do that. We also don't have many covenants in our loan docs, so some organizations will be required to maintain a specific amount of cash on hand. We don't require any of that. The other things that we do, there are a few special financing products that we do work with, specifically the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program. It's a federal program supporting affordable housing development. We have a staff and a team that works exclusively in that world, in that space. And we also do a lot of work on new market tax credits for larger projects that are located in highly distressed census tracts. Next slide, please, Kate. And so where our capital solutions team and our real estate solutions team sort of intersect and sort of cross over a little bit is that we go beyond just sort of providing the typical lending and consulting services, or I should say the lending services. The consulting side is certainly part of it, but both sides of our house can help an organization evaluate its capacity to take on a loan. And then certainly the capital solutions team, the lending side, we can provide loans, based on that analysis, but we can also provide support and access to resources, grants, that could alleviate the need for longer term debt. And part of that is sort of, like I said, identifying potential grants, assisting through the planning of those presentations and those applications. And then we also have, as I mentioned before, On our low-income housing tax credit side of the house and our new market tax credit side of the house, we do offer some technical assistance to assist with those applications to help organizations not only apply for those tax credits through IFF perhaps, or other lenders that have the ability to support with those types of financial resources. With that, I will turn it over to my colleague Kate to lead us through our real estate solutions.
Thanks, Brett. So my name is Kate Ansorga. I'm the managing director for the real estate solutions work that we do in the larger Chicago metro area footprint, which includes Northwest Indiana, going all the way up to Milwaukee. And so what are real estate solutions? You know, we believe that nonprofits frequently could use help with executing real estate projects, that a lot of organizations don't take on a real estate project that often, and having someone who's on the staff to help support the organization may not make sense from a planning point of view for that organization. So we can support that through a consulting engagement. So we do from the first start, idea, the vision, you know you need a new facility, but you're not sure how to address it, all the way through design and construction oversight until you're occupying your new space. We help with organizations to plan and execute that. I think one thing that makes us unique as a real estate consultant is that as a nonprofit ourselves who exclusively is working with nonprofits, we know a lot about the sectors that nonprofits work in. And so that means understanding what are the best ways that you can design an early childhood education center, affordable housing, domestic violence shelter, you know, the gamut of nonprofit facilities. If you think about so many of those buildings, every single square foot counts in that space. You want to make sure that you're using it to make the most impact as far as your programs go, and that you're also being really thoughtful about how you spend the money, both from the upfront capital raise, as well as how you think about occupying that space to keep it affordable going forth into the future. So we provide real estate consulting services on a fee basis, but we keep ourselves really affordable so that we're accessible to nonprofits so we can work with them. And we're really adaptable to be able to work in all phases of a project. So we can start and stop. Just to highlight the relationship with our loan program, you don't have to borrow with IFF to use our real estate services. You don't have to use our real estate services to use our loan program. So it's really independent. Many organizations find that it can be beneficial to have people who are working on both sides of the house, so to speak, to support the organization, but it's not a requirement. And we serve the whole Midwest, so really covering several different states across the Midwest area. A little description of so what does it mean to work with us from start to finish? You can engage with us independently in any one of these scopes or for all of them. The initial engagement is doing something we call a feasibility, and it's really before you've decided what you need to do for your organization. So helping vision what your organization needs to be successful, to be efficient, and to be affordable. So that's coming up with your facility criteria, your square footage needs, understanding your market and your site search area where you would like to locate a building, and comparing 3 options to really understand, should I lease, should I buy, should I go big, should I go small, should I phase my project? What are different ways that I could really connect my program and the impact that I do to how a facility supports it? We do facility assessments, so we walk through buildings, either a building a client is in right now that they're trying to decide if they should stay and invest in it, or if they should leave and find a new building. And we walk through new buildings, some that are on the verge of falling down and others that are very good condition, and basically do what we all do when we buy a house, which is typically to get a home inspection, and yet are with many nonprofits who don't work with someone to really understand what they're taking on as far as building systems, roof, accessibility, building code, all of those implications, and how they're going to operate in their space. And we support organizations through site search and through what we call the pre-development. So bringing on an architect, doing your design vision, going through the budgeting, working with a contractor, and then doing construction oversight. So an example of how it might look if you wanted to work with IFF, here's an organization that's used kind of a full suite of services. So North Lawndale Employment Network is an organization that has workforce development in the city of Chicago and is close to opening their new building that they've went through kind of soup to nuts with IFF. So it started with engaging with IFF in a capacity building program. So there was a program called Stronger Nonprofits Initiative where NLEN accessed financial management training and real estate planning services, to working with us as as their owner's rep to help them with design and construction oversight, to using IFF as a bridge loan to help support them during the capital campaign phase. So I just want to take a few minutes to talk about like why are facilities important. Hopefully you're here today because you think facilities are important, so you carved out some time. But I want to say some of this because I think sometimes organizations hear from funders and from other people who are evaluating their organization from the outside that facilities maybe aren't as important. And these are things that are really fundamental to how we approach an organization working with them on the real estate consulting side, and also how we evaluate ability to borrow and help support an organization in thinking about how financing can be strategic for them. So, first is just to stop and think about your space today. Just everyone just take a moment in their head to think about how they occupy space as an organization and how do you feel as you move through it. So what do you see? How do you see it from a client's point of view, from a staff's point of view, from a volunteer's point of view, and how does that space make you feel? So we often do this when we're thinking about our own homes and how we feel in our spaces. And do you do that same kind of thought about thinking about how you occupy your offices, where you provide services, where you're engaging with the work that you do? How does that space show up in your community? How does it look on the street? How does it engage with other organizations in the community? And how does it support you as you do your program goals? Is your facility doing something that helps you make more impact, or is it actually limiting your impact? I think it's easy once you've taken a moment to do that, to think about the visitor client experience of how they see your space. So I worked with an organization that was a food pantry that had flowers to give away to people who came in to get food. And they put the flowers right up front. And they said that they wanted people who come into that space to see that first. And it was really about providing them dignity and accessing a space where people often don't feel dignified. And so really starting as the first moment someone walks in the door, that they're being welcomed with something that many times people don't think of as flowers as being necessary for life. But this organization wanted people to really feel that flowers are core to who we are, that experiencing beauty is part of something that everyone can identify with. Thinking about employee hiring. So how is your space supporting you when someone walks into the space for the first time for an interview? How does it keep clients, how does it keep employees there, keep them satisfied? What is, some of the organizations that I've been working with that have pieces of ceiling tile falling down on someone's desk? How does it feel to show up every day when there's a toilet backing up, when there's little pieces of a building that are falling apart and that you're spending your time fixing them instead of being able to do the program work that you want to be doing in your community? How does your space actually create community with the staff that you work with the clients that you work with providers who you might partner with, who might share your space, and with people who are participating in the community and might see your space as they walk by on the street? And then last, but certainly not least, is what does your building do for your own financial health? So this could be thinking about whether the money you spend on occupancy is going towards a lease payment, rent, or whether it's going towards borrowing on a loan to be able to build your own net assets. So obviously staying on top of deferred maintenance is something that can be really important for your organization. Postponing important facility investments can lead to problems down the road because you'll have to deal with it in emergencies. And then thinking about, so how does facilities show up in your organization's strategic plan? Did you end up in your space because of someone's past decision? Have you taken time to think strategically about, is the space that you're in strategic for your organization? And if it's not, what can you do as an organization to make space in your strategic plan to get to a space that will be supportive of your organization? Who is going to participate in that process? Is it a small number of people who are in the C-suite of your organization? Is it stakeholders who work throughout your organization at different levels? How are the board members engaging with your own facility decisions? And do you have the right expertise to help you as you plan ahead for the future? Have you taken time to spend on how your facilities are making both program impact and financial impact on your organization? And then a couple of myths that we often hear at IFF, and I know some organizations feel this more than others, but it's really to stop and think about whether there are people in your organization or you yourself who believe these things and whether they are helping or limiting your organization. So I think one of the most common ones that people are starting to really revisit is that nonprofits shouldn't have surpluses, that they should have a zero-based budget, that every year the amount of revenue that comes in is equal to the expenses that go out, and that you don't want to build up a surplus And especially as we live through a pandemic right now, thinking about how important surpluses can be for an organization during tough times, that having reserves and having financial, ways that you've built it up, whether it's to invest in your facility, whether it's to invest in programs, that those can be something that both help you through tough times, but also support you as you grow in good times, being able to draw on those assets when you want to expand, when you have new opportunities, that being able to access that can be really strategic. Another myth we've heard is that nonprofits shouldn't have nice things, that they shouldn't have a good facility, that every dollar you save on your facility means you can put that dollar out on the street, out to a client, out through your programs. And by keeping your occupancy costs lean and mean, that you are making more impact in the way that you do work. And as I said before in the previous slides, really thinking about, does saving that money actually help you in the long run? Are there strategic ways that we can invest in facilities that support both the clients and the staff and people making impact in the way that you do your work? Another one is that nonprofits shouldn't have real estate or shouldn't own real estate, that having spaces that you lease is the most strategic thing to do, that you may not know what the future looks like, and leasing really provides you the most short-term decision making on that, and that some funders don't even give grants to occupancy costs, and so it can be very difficult for organizations to plan for how they're going to fund the occupancy costs. And last is that nonprofits shouldn't have debt, that not having debt is something you can be proud of and say, look, I don't own debt, and that's something that's strong about our organization. And obviously that having debt, not having debt can be something that's great for your organization, but it can also point out that you may not be taking advantage of financing out there that could strategically allow you to grow. So an example that someone once gave me is, you could take 5 years to do a capital campaign to allow you to open a new building without debt. Or you could do that same capital campaign in 2 years and borrow funds, and you'd be open 2 years sooner or 3 years sooner in that community and providing services. So do you hold yourself back from growth to allow yourself to do a full capital campaign without debt? Or if your organization is financially ready to take on debt, do you see using debt as something strategic to allow you to grow faster and to make impact sooner? And that's it. So that was kind of a lot to cover right there. I want to take a moment and just have everyone stop and think about kind of what you heard today, think about how it applies to your organization. And I'm really curious if people see these ideas showing up in the way they do their work, in the funder community who's providing funding for them, or if these things are surprising, or if you're already feel that there are things that you're working on in your own organization. I'm going to stop sharing so that we can go back to the room here.
And feel free, you should be able to just unmute yourselves. And so feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question, or use the chat box, or you can use the raise your hand feature. So whatever way you're most comfortable with.
So maybe just one question to kick it off, if anyone wants to jump out there. Is there anything here today that you've been working on as an organization that you're excited to see here?
Yes, can you hear me? This is Marianne Niner.
Yeah.
Okay, hi. Yeah, our organization, Planting Possibilities, is the name of our organization. And we have been fundraising for several years and intend to build a live, learn, training, work center in Lake County, Indiana. And we're to the point we're looking for property, and just joined an organization that's called Autism Housing Association. And it's organizations all over the country basically who are doing this. And we learned lately about what low-income housing tax credits are, and how to try and find developers who have worked with that in the past. Now, you sound like you're familiar with that. That's something that you were familiar with.
Yeah.
And so we're to the point we're looking for real estate, and really kind of want to get going on things. So actually kind of this is kind of fortuitous.
Yeah, we definitely have worked with organizations who are trying to basically pair themselves up. Low-income housing tax credits or super competitive opportunity to provide housing typically for working class families in a community that's affordable. And because of the competitiveness of it, usually it's developers who really operate in that space who consistently get allocations to do that kind of housing. And so we have worked with some organizations that are looking at how they could co-locate, bring services to partner with a developer. And usually there's a kind of small group of developers who have experience and history in the community, and also typically have kinds of populations that they serve. And so you're really trying to find the right partnership with someone who recognizes what your role in the development is. Are you bringing financing, cash? Are you bringing the programs? Are you bringing the services? How will you support your program with the rest of the housing? And so talking through all of that can be just making sure you understand like what each person's bringing to the table, and what the timeline of your plans are, because low-income housing tax credits sometimes can take a couple of years to actually get an allocation for your project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what we intend to build is will include housing for adults with autism and other developmental disabilities, and build a job training center. And kind of what we're finding, we're like I said, we're looking for real estate now. We're looking for about 15 acres. And the problem we're kind of running into is that by the time we get that much land, it's not developed. So, and then to do multi-unit housing with, septic and out in the country kind of stuff doesn't really blend well, doesn't really mix. Is this the kind of stuff that you guys can offer guidance on, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so on the real estate side, we've definitely done a lot around, okay, what would be your right size search criteria? So what are your space needs, from how much, like what's your program need in order to be successful, to what are the zoning, and are there special use implications to what you're describing? Is it going to be a zoning change? And so understanding a community that, so you understand what the legal changes you might have to do your program, and then also understanding, what the timeline is to do that. Is it a supportive community? How do you create relationships with the community and politicians to help be advocates for you during that time? Because some communities, frankly, are more supportive than others. So understanding what you have in front of you if you have to go through some kind of thing that might be contentious within the community. And then, the big question is on the financing side. So if you are looking to do a partnership with a developer, is just working with a developer who really understands that half of the project, so that you can pair with someone who's both supporting you and you can support them.
We just had a question in the chat from Robert Wall asking if your services are only available to nonprofits.
Yeah, and I was actually just responding to the chat, so I apologize if I may miss the previous question. But so we do on the lending side, we mostly lend to nonprofits, but we do make exceptions, as Kate was just kind of mentioning, to for-profit developers that are building affordable housing, and also to developers who are either building or bringing in grocery operators to low income, low access, or I guess food desert areas. Primarily just because those developers, there isn't many nonprofit developers in either one of those spaces. It's just a larger pool to work with for-profit entities. We have done some work with some for-profit groups in early learning or early childhood education, but that's been primarily in Detroit, in another market that we work in. We haven't really explored that in much greater detail in the other places that we work. So mostly to nonprofits with a few exceptions on the lending side.
And then Terry asked if are your services only available for new builds or rental restoration?
So on the real estate consulting side, we work with lease, we work with purchase, we work with new construction, renovations, the whole gamut. So if there's real estate involved, then we can support that. And I think, Brett, the same goes for the loan side, right?
Yes. Yep. as I mentioned, yeah, the tenant improvements is definitely something that's a bit of a unique thing that we're able to do. Usually it involves just a little bit more documentation around making sure that the landlord and the organization as the tenant and IFF as lender are all sort of working together and truly partnered.
And Mrs. Blair, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Kelly.
Oh,
It's definitely needed in our area. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to share the information with us in terms of what you do to assist nonprofit organizations. For those of you that don't know, I am the co-founder and executive director for the Blind Social Center in Gary, Indiana. And we have had a series of things that we have been challenged with in terms of funding and lending. I'm going to make this the short end of it so I don't draw out the story. But we're currently, as Kelly know, I don't know, Kelly, if you was able to watch the video in reference to the pandemic episode that happened with the Blind Social Center, the reason why we're no longer there.
oh no.
You did know?
I have not seen that, no, so
Okay.
we'll have to catch up.
Okay.
We've been displaced.
We're currently displaced. However, we have cited a new location for the Blind Social Center. And in doing so, of course, we're looking for different funding sources that will assist us in renovating the current building that we have located. So therefore, it's kind of a long story, but I'd like to know, my question is how can I get in touch with you directly, Brett and Kate, in order to sit down and to share our master plan in terms of moving forward for the Blind Social Center? We've already purchased a new building. We own it free and clear. We purchased it with the, as you say, leftover funds from last year. So we were able to have a surplus to be able to purchase a new location, the new building. But we do need funding to renovate it. So we'd like to talk with you, Brett and Kate, in terms of, like I said, moving forward with the Blind Social Center. Now we're doing all of our programs virtually online, and they're working out fairly well. But of course, we know if we have a brick and mortar building, we could do much more than what we are able to do virtually.
So I see Kelly is dropping my email and Brett's email into the chat. And please reach out. We absolutely have those kind of conversations with organizations in your situation all the time. So I'd be happy to make time to talk with you about next steps.
Yeah,
Okay.
for
Truly
sure.
appreciate that. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you. That's sorry to hear about the challenges, but also good to hear that it sounds like you've got a kind of a nice path forward here, or and a plan. That's great.
Well, yes, things happen in life, so we can't dwell on the things that happen that are not in our favor. So we have to just move forward in terms of what can we do better, but looking back to say, well, we don't want this to ever happen again, as far as us being displaced because someone else owns the building or the structure that we're housing. So that's been rectified because we now own the location. Okay. So moving forward is just a matter of renovating the building. We've already had our architect to draw up the new rendering. It's currently downstate waiting for approval, which in the next couple of days we should have approval. We've already pulled our permits to get started when spring break. So just need the funding to go behind the master plan of what we would like to see in the area that we have just purchased this new location, this new building.
Yeah, I think it would be good if that, I mean, I think it'd be good to sit down with IFF and talk with them about kind of some of your options and what would be a good path forward based on what you're thinking for your, next housing, real estate or rental facility for your organization.
Yeah.
So,
No
and I
more
am
rentals.
sorry to hear that. We'll have to catch up and I'll go to, yeah.
Okay, we'll get caught up.
All right.
But no
Kate.
more rental, no more rental, okay?
No more rentals. All right. So not rental solution. That's next.
That's fixed.
Yeah.
Kelly,
So for all of you that are not familiar with the Blind Social Center, please visit our website. You can follow along with us as we develop our new location, because our new location will have the service of assisting blind individuals that are displaced, temporarily displaced. And what I mean by that is we're also going to offer housing for the blind and visually impaired. Adjacent to where we purchased the building, it has land attached to it that came in the packet. So what we're going to do is build single family, duplex units in order for us to have housing available for those blind and visually impaired and or disabled individual that may be new to the area, just moved into the area, don't have transitional housing to go to. Well, we'll provide that there at the Blind Social Center with the new units that we're building adjacent to where the center will be located. And along the corridor, in terms of where the center is located, is an avenue that unfortunately, being almost the last street that borders Gary and Maryville, it's like a dead end source of street, a short street. And they used to use that for a really bad dump site. So being that we have now purchased in that area, we want to beautify that whole corridor, which is directly adjacent south of the Blind Social Center's new location is the bike trail, the Oak Savannah Bike Trail. So we want to take that whole corridor from Broadway to Madison Street and beautify that area where the new Blind Social Center location will be along the whole 52nd Avenue of those 4-block radius. So we have a large plan, and we need assistance to help us get there. Just give us some consulting, a little funding that goes along with that. And the Blind Social Center then at that time can proceed on and move into doing what we do best, which is assisting and taking care and servicing our blind and visually impaired community.
Great. Thank you. I want to get to Katie. I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, hey everybody. My name is Katie Curley, and I am a co-founder and now the executive director and principal at Steel City Academy. And we actually, in our startup years, partnered with IFF. So I can speak personally to both the real estate solution side and the financing side, that partnering with your guys' organization allowed this school to come to life in Gary. And we're now an A-rated school and servicing and providing an education to 500 plus students. So I am forever grateful to IFF for getting us to this point, and can really speak personally to all that you shared. We are back sort of in this facilities gerbil wheel. The work that we did with you guys, we thought this was going to be our forever home in the Glen Park neighborhood. But now, there is a large waste processing facility that's going to be built about 30 feet away from our school. So we are back, sort of reimagining what our long-term facilities vision is. So Kelly, I appreciate you hosting this call because I really just want to re-engage with IFF as we think about continuing to provide a great education to kids in Gary. So no specific question, but just gratitude. And I'll definitely be reaching out and looking forward to connecting with both you, Brett and Kate.
Yeah, Katie, when I saw your name on the registration list, I was glad to see you there because I knew you had worked with IFF in the past. So I thought you might have some sort of, experience or story to share. So thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I always appreciate the shout out, Katie. So.
Yeah. I'm serious. We still use some of those documents we created around the real estate side of like our facilities vision statement from all of our stakeholders and the space needs chart. I mean, we use them all the time. So they are like artifacts that just are guiding our organization in a really genuine way. So.
Cool.
All right. And then Brett, you have another question from Jeffrey?
Yeah. So Jeffrey had direct messaged me and asked about, so given that IFF doesn't use appraisals to assess our loans or the ability of an organization to repay, how does IFF, what kind of judgment do we use? What kind of analysis do we use? And that's a really, really good question. And I apologize for not covering it when I said we don't do appraisals. So IFF, what we are is a cash flow lender. So what that means is that when we look at an organization, we're looking at its the amount of money that it comes in or that comes in through its operations to see how that is able to pay the debt. And then what we do is we try to structure the loan to make it easiest for the nonprofit to pay that loan back without having too big of an impact on other parts of the organization, the operations, or the balance sheet, how you manage your cash or how you look at your leverage. So again, it was more of a philosophical choice for our organization to combat the historical sort of inequity in lending and looking at asset-based lending practices. What we wanted to see was, the organization can pay back the debt, and we don't necessarily need to be worried about what the value of the real estate is. So hopefully that answers your question, Jeffrey. It looks kind of the same as probably what you would see at any other lending institutions, just we're mostly concerned about the long-term sustainability and the operations of the organization.
Okay. And then we have another question from Shire.
Hey, thanks, Kate and Brett, for putting this on. I really appreciate it. So one of the things our organization has done is actually has embraced the concept of debt, but we've discovered that once buildings go up, fundraising stops for capital campaigns. People don't want to give to a building that they drive past and they see the kids going to on a daily basis. What have you seen people do to kind of help overcome that? Because while we do have cash flow to service the debt, it is ultimately going to be impacting our operations.
Yeah, that's well. So I in a former life, I did development work. I was a fundraising professional, and we went through a capital campaign, and there's a lot of those are the sort of the challenges. At first it feels like you can't build up the momentum to actually get in the building. Then all of a sudden everybody wants to give, and then all of a sudden that all kind of dries up. So that I think there's a bit of converting those capital campaign donors to ongoing sort of operational support, and really being strategic about that. The other things in terms of the capital campaign, if you haven't quite wrapped that up, or if there's other opportunities, I think one of the things that we often did was look at naming rights to rooms or benches. I mean, you can probably put a name on just about anything, bricks, walkways, to continue to bring money in specifically for the capital campaign. But at least from my experience, doing the work, a lot of it was really doing a lot of outreach to capital campaign donors to talk about the ongoing need of the organization and how to convert those to ongoing operational support. I don't know if that answers the question directly, but that's certainly it would be the guidance that I would give.
Just to like jump onto that, I mean, I think it's thinking about like, why did someone give to you in that capital campaign, and what would be the connection? So if there is someone who's facility focused, is there an opportunity to do like a capital needs reserve fund and to fundraise for something that's related to capital improvement specific to a program, and tying that? We work with a lot of organizations that when they do their capital campaign actually fundraise for more than the actual facility cost because they want to create reserves to help with operations and the future occupancy costs while they ramp up in their space, knowing that occupancy costs might be hard for the first few years as they're growing into a new space. And then, you know, thinking about like what is really your annual fundraising goal that fully includes all the occupancy costs that you should be paying for. So again, this is, I think, something that funders in the past sometimes didn't really want to see occupancy costs as something they fundraised for, but how do you start really shaping that? Paying for occupancy costs is about being financially resilient, and having space that you can control is really healthy for your organization, and being proud of that and saying like, this is why it matters when you fund that, and how you're supporting our organization to be more resilient in the future. So all of these words, I feel like year after year are becoming easier to sell when you're talking to either individual funders or group funders, but I agree, sometimes people really just want to see like, how is this helping an individual, and not, you know, the admin costs that, you know, like looking at Charity Navigator and stuff like GuideStar, it's like, you know, what's their rating? That's too much of it's going to admin. So really understanding like, what does it mean when it goes to those costs that you can defend that.
Now, you had mentioned when, Kate, I think when you were talking, you mentioned one of the questions was you guys look at if an organization is financially ready to take on debt. How do you know if an organization is ready to take on debt?
Well, I think there's two questions. So are you ready strategically to use financing for your organization? And that's about just understanding like, what's the financial picture that your audits tell about your organization to any lender. So people are going to look up like, what do your last 3 years say about you? How have you been paying for occupancy costs in the past? What's your plan for the future? How is a facility project where you use debt going to change how you operate as an organization? Will it allow you to attract a new revenue line item or to grow a revenue line item because you're using space in a different way? So just what your history tells doesn't necessarily mean that's what your future is. So it's really connecting how you've been running your organization to what you want to be doing in the future, and kind of showing like, well, what's going to change if you're planning to do something that looks different than what the past is? How are you planning for staff changes? How have you brought on board members who are going to support you as you change how you operate or how you grow your organization? And so it's that story where I feel like sometimes people struggle internally. They may know like why they're working on something and how it's going to help support their organization, but being able to tell that to a third party person who maybe doesn't know all of the internal workings of your organization in a way that they understand, so that they can, you know, feel like they can support it, whether it's someone giving cash out of their pocketbook or whether it's a lender who's making a loan. Brett, do you want to add?
No, I think that's really good. I think I guess the only thing I will say is, yeah, you know, I mentioned before that, you know, we are cash flow lenders, and so yeah, we would look at the operating performance and maybe even a pro forma looking out into the future, and you might be able to say, you know, we make enough money to support this debt. But I think it's also pretty important to look at what the impact it could be on the cash reserve. So how much do you contribute to that project up front? And really, as Kate mentioned, the strategy of taking on debt is to preserve some of that cash in the event perhaps of a rainy day. Or how do you sort of continue to service the debt, but maybe build up cash reserves? You know, so I think it's looking at it a bit broader than just saying, you know, we can afford this based on you know, occupancy costs that we currently have. So yeah, there's a couple different indicators that we might look at.
Great. Do we have any other questions? So I have one more. Are you still working with organizations on the PPP loans?
Yeah, we are. So we partnered with another community development financial institution based out of Minneapolis called CRF. And the first round, we did a little bit more work in conjunction with them, where we were doing a little bit more of the criteria, the evaluation, and then turning it over to them. We've kind of switched that a little bit more, and now CRF is actually almost exclusively doing all of the work, except for they are getting referrals from IFF. So we have a link on our website that we could certainly share with the group. And that would provide you access to that. I guess it's a small sort of intake form that would lead you to a connection with CRF. It'll come through IFF, but it'll have CRF attached to it. So it can get a little bit confusing, but we are doing that work still.
So if there's any organizations that did not apply for or didn't take advantage of the second round of PPP loans, or the first round even, but especially, that second round is still open as far as I know. And so I know news changes daily, but as far as I know, it's still open and available. And so if there's any organizations that have not applied for that second PPP loan, I saw that IFF is working with organizations through that partnership. And you can, and it's easier from what I know than sometimes working with some of the banks.
Yeah, so won't make any, I won't make any any comments about the bank's responsiveness in that case. But for those who did actually receive the first round, and you're looking at, as you're approaching maybe the loan forgiveness, we also have a partnership with an organization formerly known as Fiscal Management Associates. They changed their name. Kate might know their new name better than me now, but they're fantastic at providing some consulting services and doing webinars for organizations that are ready to do the forgiveness piece of that, the P3 loan. If any of you all have gone through that previously. If you haven't, and you decide to do the P3, they're a great resource and a great partner that we could provide those resources to. So a little bit of like a soup to nuts kind of payroll protection program service.
Yeah, I'm looking, I'll drop something in the chat. They're now known as BDO FMA, but they have a lot of stuff on their website about the forgiveness process, and a great source if you're looking for help.
Thank you. Any other questions before we wrap up? All right, well, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Kelly Ano from with Legacy Foundation, for in case anyone,
Hello.
in case I don't know anyone on the call. Oh,
Hello,
Martha,
everybody. I'm just listening in. My name is Martha Riley. I own and operate the Mustard Seed Center, Real Change, Real Victory. And part of that arm is, of course, it's a 24-hour daycare. And I wanted to listen because I did obtain some property that's paid for. It's a huge amount of, and I come out of the teaching from Bloomington Normal, Illinois, of course. And so I want to get into more with the students that I have even now, doing a broader beginning, like preschool to Head Start. And that's where I'm at right there. And then of course, daycare. And then we have other things like the seniors program, the lock and loaded program, where the courts, have teams to come in from out of different schools. And they come into our program. We do have licensed social worker, and we got a handful of a well-rounded holistic program. But I wanted to listen because I want to be able to try to see what's in the community, what's going on, to engage or to ask questions if I needed to in future. So I have a great board who are great donors. They donate. And I do have another business that I merged. We're in the process of merging that come with funding. So I'm really seeing a big picture here, but I just wanted to tap into the training to see who all, and so that you guys can meet me. I don't know when I would need you or when I would need advice, but I'm out here, you guys. So I just want to make myself known and to listen in.
Great. Well, thank you for joining. And it's good, even if you don't know when or if you'll need it, it's good to know that this is a resource that's there to have in your toolbox.
Yes.
And so, yeah, you may not be ready right now, but it may be something that you're thinking about as part of your 5-year plan even. And so it's just good to know that this is available and out there. So,
I
yeah, thanks.
appreciate every last one of you. I enjoyed hearing. I did the PPP, of course. I was the first one actually that put an app in and didn't get it the first round. So I'm still there in the process of that. So I'm hoping that I can make it happen before I lunch out into the deep and grab for some help. So I'm gonna see if when the app come, I've been approved, but I am not, I'm considered to be a foreign business here. I don't know how that works, but certainly I went through the whole rigmarole with that. And but I don't think that'll stop anything, but it's still, that's what I am here. And I have employees. So it's a lot going on, but at the same time, we slowed down a lot so that we can see what we're gonna do with the place that we have. It's land. And we already have some plans. My son-in-law is a builder, but he's from the South. So, but he certainly is he has his own company. So I just want to get a feel. So I appreciate you guys' patience with me. I know I'm doing a lot of things here, but I'm attentive. Thank you. I hope to see you guys again.
Thank you. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We appreciate your time. And again, my name is Kelly Ano with Legacy Foundation. You can reach me through Legacy Foundation, and we put Brett and Kate's information in the chat. If you didn't get it or if you lose it, feel free to reach out to me and I can connect you as well. Or if you have any specific questions that you want to ask that get into more detail, you can reach out to any one of us. So,
Thank you so
Brett
much,
and Kate.
everybody.
Bye.
All right, have a good day.
Be well.
Thank you.